you.
Be you.
Be you.
Be you.
Be you.
Okay. Hello and welcome back to BU's Inspirational Interviews. Please remember to subscribe. It helps the channel grow. And thank you for being part of the BU community. And if you're not yet, hit subscribe. You'll become part of the BU community. All right, everyone. With me today, I have a special guest. His name is Mike, and I saved all my questions. I have so many questions for him, and I saved them all for you, so we can learn about Mike together. So, Mike, let's hear a little bit background, like where you grew up, the backstory, and then we'll get into what we're here to share.
Okay, that sounds good. So I grew up in Florida. I've lived in California for about 15 years.
Okay.
I grew up like in a beach town. I surfed a lot. I would say growing up was a lot of fun and enjoyable for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. Most of the time I spent was surfing, skateboarding. I was in a lot of like those types of sports growing up, and I ended up traveling a lot, doing a lot of things like going to Costa Rica, Tahiti,
Wow.
a lot of countries to surf and things like that. That
Oh,
was
wow.
Yeah. I did a little bit of college, not too much, but I guess I found my calling was to travel a lot. So, yeah, that's kind of the beginning of my late teens, early 20s. I eventually spent most of my time kind of going back and forth between what I want to do for a living, but ended up moving to California after I actually got into some trouble in Florida for growing cannabis, which surprisingly enough is not big of a deal, quite as big a deal in California.
Yeah.
So once I got through that, I decided to move to California and pick that up as as more of a legitimate career. And so I started a business here, developed that, and that's what I spent most of my time doing. So fast forward, a couple years, I had a large collective. I had several farms. I worked every day. I managed and owned them. It was kind of my baby, so to speak. And so yeah, I mean that kind of brings us to roughly where everything changed. So.
Yeah. So I'm gonna let you.
Sure.
I'm gonna let you. Tell everyone. So what changed?
So, like I was saying, I worked with my hands. I worked with my body. I enjoyed doing that. I was, an owner, manager, plus part of the crew, so to speak. But there was a point in time. So basically, where I suffered cardiac arrest in my kitchen, and there was a variety of things that happened that night. I don't know exactly all of them, but when that happened, I know that I'd collapsed. I hit my head. There was a period of time that passed before emergency help was called.
Were you alone?
No, I wasn't. But when I was discovered, we didn't know how long I'd been there up to that point. And so they revived me in the kitchen because I had no pulse when they arrived. And
Oh my gosh, no way.
yeah, so it was already not looking good. And so once I was revived, they got a helicopter to land close to the house. And once I was in there, I lost my pulse again on the way to the hospital. I think my mom took a lot of notes, and my partner at the time actually told me that I lost my pulse for at least 15 minutes. So I was basically dead twice, at that point. And so when I got to the hospital, I was essentially in a coma on a ventilator, and that's how I existed for a period of time. During that time, they would kind of take care of me. I had good advocates and a support system, so they were there to kind of advocate for me. But there was a time when the doctors figured I was not going to make it. I was probably going to be what most people call like a vegetable, and be on life support. And my mom specifically, made the doctors and the team give me a brain scan to check for brain activity and stuff like that. And so when I did display some level of activity. They essentially woke me up. Um, that was a time that I remember specifically because leading up to that, they had tried basically everything to save my life, and they put me on what's called an ECMO machine. And there's only two places you can put that, and one is in your neck, and the other is in your groin, in the femoral area. And so they chose the groin, and what it does is just circulates live blood. It takes it out, oxygenates it, and then pumps it back into your vital organs, basically just keeping you alive, almost like a living cadaver at that point. It's like the last ditch effort before you're dead. And when I did wake up, I remember this specifically. I don't remember a lot, but I remember calling my father and looking down and kind of updating him, and my stomach was just filling up with blood. And what had happened, the area where they had inserted the life support system had ruptured, and that's a large vein. So basically, I was bleeding to death right there.
Oh my God.
And they rushed me back downstairs to the emergency area. They performed an emergency surgery. They grafted a piece of skin onto my femoral to patch it, and then closed it up again. But after that, I was basically in another comatose state for a period of time. And when I woke up from that, I just really went completely downhill. My body wasn't taking up any nutrients or water or anything like that. And I lost a lot of weight. I wasn't moving. And essentially, I guess this is kind of like a series of unfortunate things. I should have been moved a little bit more, and I ended up getting a wound in the, like where your tailbone is. It continued to grow and grow, and eventually it broke the skin, and it got so bad and so deep that you could see the bone, my tailbone.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that probably describes it it was rough.
Oh my gosh.
And I got a severe infection through that, a form of staph infection. And really, when you go on to that level of life support, it focuses on your vitals, and it really leaves out a lot of things. So my legs ended up suffering the most, and they started to turn black. The infection got in there. It basically liquefied my bones and my tendons and my muscles. And I complained about it regularly and said I had pain there. And finally, they were going to go do like a surgery just to kind of see what's going on, quote unquote. And when they did, they basically said my legs are gone. And you're probably going to go into some level of shock again, and maybe possibly die again. So
They told you that?
yeah, that's what they told my mom,
Oh.
actually. Unfortunately, they told her on like
But
a
still.
Friday, and she was coming to visit, and they were gonna let me know on a Monday, and she's like, no, I'm not gonna sit with my son the whole weekend and know this information. You're gonna tell him now. So yeah, this is like a week after my 40th birthday, and they told me that. I was emotional, I cried a lot.
Did you say they told you?
Yeah,
You don't remember that?
they told me, they explained it to me in a way like this was the best option given the lifestyle that I lived before, being working, athletic, to give me what they call the best base to kind of recover some level of life. And the other option was you could just be a cripple or possibly die from the infection. So that's how they explained it to me. It was probably one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make, to be okay with them cutting my legs off. But I guess it's hard to describe. It was almost like a dream the whole time. You know, you go into surgery, and you know this is happening and going to occur. But
Oh my gosh.
yeah, so it's a lot, and it was a lot. But go through the surgery, I come out. I'm still in absolutely horrible condition because I was when it happened. You know, I was about 95 pounds, and then probably less minus my legs at that point. And so it was a challenge even from then. I still had this wound. I still had issues with nutrients and with hydration, and I struggled a lot and had a lot of different things. I even had a case of valley fever that they discovered,
What's that?
So it's kind of common in the West. Like valley fever, it's a form of infection that lies dormant in soil. And so what I was doing before, working in soil and stuff like that, you can kind of get an infection through that. So they said that may have contributed to some of the challenges. Obviously, the other infection. And so they threw just about every type of antibiotic they could find at it, and nothing would work. And I did continue to improve. I fought really hard to be able to eat with a spoon or a fork, so I had to do speech therapy over and over again to see if I could swallow, to make sure I wasn't going to aspirate or choke. And so that was something I fought for. And eventually I was able to eat, ground up food essentially, and that was a good day. So fast forward a couple months, I'm in the hospital. I improve a little bit. Eventually I start going to these acute cares that are outside of the hospital, and they're bad. I got COVID in one of them.
No
Also, this is
way.
all during COVID, so
Oh,
like
man.
everything is a madhouse. It's just awful. Like
Yeah.
you're in that situation. You're the last to be seen, because the way they would facilitate it, they're logistically, the practitioners, nurses, doctors would see everybody before you. So essentially, they would see individuals that have COVID or people like me the very last, because then they could leave the building afterwards and wouldn't potentially contaminate the hospital or other patients after. So everything was last. It was a crazy time, so we all know that. But so yeah, I actually was in a combination of either the hospital or acute cares, 3 different ones for over 2 years. And then when I finally did get home, I still needed a nurse full time. I still needed somebody to feed me, change me, shower me, everything. I had 0 independence, had a medical bed at home, all of those things. But I really started to improve once I got home. Over the course of about 6 or 8 months, eating home cooked food, being around my friends and family, my partner, things like that was like I think a part of a psychological aspect to it. And so I started to gain a little weight. And like I said, about 6 or 8 months later, I started to get to the point after a lot of OT and PT where I could clean myself, use the restroom myself, feed myself, although I was in a wheelchair and stuff like that. But that was kind of like this tipping point where I kind of accepted my reality, I guess, and decided that maybe I could live like this. And it's kind of been a journey ever since then, but I guess that was probably the point where things started going downhill instead of uphill. So yeah, that doesn't bring us to present, but that's about where I got the level of acceptance about everything that happened. I had a friend actually, and he's an Olympian snowboarder, and my friend introduced me to him. And one thing he told me that's still stuck with me to this day is if you can master your perspective and your attitude and control that, I know how you are. Like, you will 100% be okay with this, and you'll manage. And like I said, that's still stuck with me until today, and I still think about it till today, for sure.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. So,
Those are some powerful words, because no matter what your situation is, be it worse or less. Not that any person's struggle, is worse or less or whatever. It all comes down to perspective. That alone, that statement that you just said is so important. It can even be, I don't know, I have a million examples, but I have so many questions for you regarding your mindset. So, like you said, the doctors told you that you were crying a lot. Who wouldn't, when you're
yeah.
giving that news? But do you remember that time? Do you remember, like,
Well,
that period?
there's parts of it. There's parts that I kind of wish I remember. One of them being when I was dead. I kind of
I
wish
had
I could
questions
recall
about that
that.
too. Yeah.
I've thought about even getting hypnotized to maybe recall that, or some level of bringing it back. But the closest thing I can remember is when I was on the phone and that rupturing.
Oh man.
But they did have me on a lot of ketamine and a lot of opioids and other types of medications, which created a lot of vivid dreams and things like
Yeah.
that. But I do actually remember the surgeon talking to me and basically telling me why this is essentially my only option outside of maybe dying again, I guess, is the way he phrased it. And like I said, he tried to put it in a way or a context that this is going to give you the best chance of regaining some level of life that you had before. And I I was kind of an asshole a little bit because in just I
You were
was
angry?
frustrated for a variety of reasons, but that I did not want to believe that that was my only option. You know, I'm really stubborn. I think that kind of helped with my recovery too, but it does have its downsides. And yeah, he explained it in the best way he could, and it was really really emotional and hard. It was hard to grasp at the time, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Can you compare now? I mean, I don't even know if that's the word, but I guess like contrasting those two perspectives or ways of thinking. So the first one being like denial, kind of like, no, this isn't my only option, like this can't be my only option, right? And then the other one where you're like, okay, if this is what's happening, I'm gonna find a way to be okay with it, and then eventually being okay with it. Okay, those are three, I guess, but those three states of mind, I guess, what can you kind of compare those?
Um, you mean like from like in a context of just day-to-day life, or just the difference between
All of the above.
all
Like
of the above?
anything that comes to mind when you think, when you compare yourself, your past self, that was.
That's a good question. I would say, like I said, I've really been stubborn kind of in some way, shape, or form most of my life. So I feel like that helped was it was difficult to accept it because there had to be other options here, you know. And even though my toes were black, they would come in every week and basically take a razor and remove the black skin off
Oh
of it.
my
And,
God.
yeah.
Did you feel
and
that or no?
No,
Didn't feel it. Okay.
I didn't really feel it actually. Now that you mention it, and you know, obviously had the wound, and there was just things that were hard to get past. So I think the best way to put it would be acceptance was not easy. It was
Yeah.
really difficult.
Yeah.
I had to understand, I had to question everything, I had to challenge everything, kind of still do that to this day. But before it finally kind of resonated, and even then I was kind of reluctant. But then once it happened, lots of pain medication, lots of stuff after that. And so that's kind of was almost a cloud or like a dreamy state. And then, I just hope for the best to kind of heal and tried to do what I could in the hospital, even though there were other things that I probably could have done better, you know, as once that surgery happens. Like there's certain ways you're supposed to keep your legs and whatever, so your legs don't bend or they don't like lock in a position, basically. Still out of frustration, but there was a time where I did eventually get to the point where I was able to do things on my own and felt, I don't know, I hate to use like the phrase, but there was like a light at the end of the tunnel, you know? So it would have been difficult for me to accept having to have lifelong care, you know, having a nurse and things like that, as I think anybody would have a challenge with that. I think even men maybe even more difficult because there's an ego factor there, but
Yeah.
I think those three things didn't necessarily happen in like a streamlined sense. It was kind of all over the road before I finally got to that final moment of being okay with it.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
And what does that feel like? Like to be not, I mean, there's also, we were talking about, you know, one of my past guests who had a spinal cord injury, and he was talking about like this accident gave him so many opportunities that he wouldn't have had that accident not happened. Like, have you had that experience yet, or?
In some ways, I would say it depends on how you define opportunities.
Or
I would say,
perspective, or,
like
you know.
opportunity-wise, I a lot of the small things in life mean a lot more to me. You know, I had a chance to kind of really dig and find myself and kind of who I was to get through this. I think that was a plus. I can't say that I'm thankful that this happened, but I can
Yeah.
say that it's opened a lot of other doors as far as perspective, and it gives me a different perspective and sense on life where things just don't affect me the way they used to. I have more of a level of self-awareness that kind of just is a calming thing, I guess. Obviously, you have the same challenges that you still do. I mean, you have to make money, you have to pay bills, there's things like that that still exist, but I've gotten to meet good people. I know I've inspired some people. I know I've proven to myself that I'm very capable of, overcoming really severe challenges. And so, yeah, I think that goes a long way when when you just sit with yourself, and nobody's there to tell you it's going to be okay and you're okay. That's a big part of existing in life, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a struggle for a lot of people.
Yes.
And considering my new physical situation, I think that was important for me, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people get depressed,
Yes.
there's that aspect, and I was not without those types of days, but I don't struggle with that at all, surprisingly enough.
Really?
So, yeah. So I think that's a good thing. I do a lot of things, I think, that are preventative, that I take care of myself. I mean, I'm in the gym, 5 days a week, sometimes more. I have, a good support system, people that I talk to, friends. I do things like this when I have the opportunity, and so, yeah, you gotta, you've got to work with what you got. So.
Yeah. Did you find there was just like a day or a moment where you're like, okay, like you found yourself more on the okay side versus the depressed side, or was it progressive? Like, did it take work? Did you have to remind yourself, like, no, I'm not going to be depressed. I'm not going to go down that negative path? Because that, I find, can be so easy to do. You can just immediately think of, like, the victim mentality where you're like, poor me, why me, blah, blah, all of those thoughts, and then take you down that horrible road. Or you can be like, okay, these are the things I can do. I'm grateful that I'm here. I'm not dead, how explain that part.
Yeah, I mean, if a daily battle, maybe not a daily. So let me get, yeah, there probably at one point there was a daily battle of that, and it did take some level of self-talk and or just talking to people, or just some level of frustration, for sure, without a doubt. Like, there was days where I cried because I couldn't do the simplest things, or just that I was constantly relying on somebody. Like, there was a point in time when my partner or the nurse or whatever, like, I got to the point where it was okay to be at home by myself, but like when they would leave, like, I would just cry profusely, because I think there was a level of just, and I wouldn't even know why, it just really affected me outside of, I've never felt anything like that. So I guess that's one example. Another one would be even present day, like, I miss being really good at certain things, snowboarding and surfing and running and things like that. So I don't get emotional or overwhelmed by that, but I still have to remind myself that I'm lucky to be here, blessed to be here, and I am okay and content with how life is now. So yeah, I mean, it's not like it used to be, where it was just like flood of these emotions and really difficult things to struggle with. So I guess depression really never got a chance to complete, or however you want to describe that, get a hold of me. But I think I made enough progress incrementally over time where it was like just enough to keep me out of that dark place. Like when you creep in, maybe I would have a breakthrough in PT or OT, or I would, cook something in the kitchen myself, or prepare something in myself, or be able to get outside and go for like a walk in the scooter or the wheelchair, or get to a walker outside of a wheelchair. Like, there was these small accomplishments along the way that kind of always kept me going, So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And are you still doing like PT and stuff like that?
I had a hip replacement about a year ago, and that was something that came from everything that happened. Like I had a lack of blood flow on one side, and so it basically affected where my hip connects to my pelvis. And so there was 3 options: leave it alone and see how it works, core into it and try and create more blood flow to the bone, or replace it completely. And it had a lot of pain and leading up to that point, so I went with the full hip replacement. So I had stopped PT at that point, but I did a lot of PT after that. Present day, it's just gym, strength training, stretching, and a good diet. So I took away a lot of stuff because I did do a lot of physical therapy and occupational therapy.
Yeah.
But yeah, mostly strength training. That's it.
Yeah.
That's really what gave my life back.
So you had mentioned too that, well, off camera, that you started to get back into like the snow sports, right? Like,
Yeah.
how did that come about? How did you?
That was kind of like the first time I went up was it was a really big accomplishment because it was almost to the day of 5 years since I'd gotten flown to the hospital, and that was a big part of my life. And I'd gotten a scholarship through Achieve Tahoe, and they basically paid for my rental and somebody to go with me and all of this stuff. So the first time I went up, I got dressed out in anybody who snowboards or skis probably knows the feeling. You get dressed out in the parking lot. You might have a beer or two or just hang out and chill for a moment. Then you get on the lift and you ride all day, and it's a part of the experience too. So the whole thing, even driving up there is a big thing. Like, I drive completely independent now. Like that's
Cool.
that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Some people take that for granted even. So doing that, getting there, dressing out, getting to the slopes, and then being able to just put some level of experience back on the snow was really awesome. So I've gone twice. I'm actually going again this week on this Thursday. So that'll be 3 times this year.
Yeah.
And then probably again next month. And next year I plan on doing it more regularly. So that was a big full circle moment, because that was one thing, like I mentioned before, like there was these small things like, okay, that would keep me in the game, getting back on the snow, being able to walk, being able to drive by myself, just all of those things, just I guess some level of goal still is to this day how I keep it going, keep it moving. So yeah.
What's some advice that you could give to someone that might be in that denial phase? Like, say they've been given some news and they're kind of like, I guess it depends situational, because at some level, I feel like not accepting what the doctor says is important. I feel like okay, maybe they're right and it will go that way, but I feel like it's important to kind of challenge, like, maybe not, like have that in the back of your mind, like, okay, well, I get you're coming from a scientific standpoint, but I've heard stories of people like healing themselves through prayer, thought, whatever. It's all frequency, right?
Sure.
So do you think, okay, my first question was like give advice to someone who might be in denial, but I'm going to change it to, do you think that was part of you overcoming the mental part of it? Like, do you think that was important that you had that denial? Do you think that it helped you in some way?
I would say yes. There's obviously some advantage to modern science and everything they can do,
Yeah.
for sure. But on the other hand, that stuff doesn't always work or isn't always the best. It's dependent on the person, I feel like, because there are circumstances where an individual may not have the ability, whether it be physically or mentally, to overcome certain things, and they need some level of intervention. But there are individuals that need to find their own path. Maybe it's through stubbornness, or maybe it's through denial, or whatever it may be, and sometimes that can be the best option. I would say, in my personal circumstance, I'm glad that I did take the path I did because from, being able to look back on it um, and look at the old notes and look at everything that had happened, like my legs were completely, like I was cooked for sure. I had no other options other than just having little, sticks for legs for the rest of my life, which wouldn't have worked out for me. But there are other chances, where doctors can have the tendency to kind of just point you in the direction because they're trained to do that, and sometimes that's not always the path. It's not always just a straightforward linear path. There's more to it. Um, yeah, yeah, I think for people that are struggling with something, whether it be uh, somebody that's in my position or somebody that's kind of some health-related level and they're kind of in denial, I would honestly, for me, knowing the most about it, getting the most information I could, almost like overload of it, whether it be on the internet, whether it be talking to other doctors, getting second opinions. Like, for example, my hip, I got 3 other doctors' second opinions or third opinions before I finally went with the replacement. So I think you got to be your own best advocate, and
Yeah.
look out for yourself and try and make the most educated decision you can before you make a drastic one or whatever it may be. I think that's the best way to look at it when it comes to like challenges health-wise and stuff like that. But I think it does spill over to other things in life. I mean, making an educated decision is always better than a rash one or one out of emotion for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
What would you say is a positive that came out of this?
There's a lot, surprisingly enough. Just kind of a reconnection to some of my friends and family, I think, with myself internally. I still would like to, and in the process of like trying to use this as a positive thing, whether it help inspire others or help others see that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that you can have things like an amputation or a major health event and survive it and still find joy in life after. There's a lot of people that have amputations because they're diabetics, in other circumstances, accidents that you're just simply driving down the road or something and you're unprepared for, and suddenly your life changes in a second.
Yeah.
I think it really gives you the chance to kind of dig down deep. And if you're able to do that and kind of control, like I mentioned before, your perspective and your attitude, which is easier said than done for sure. But if that's really life in general, regardless if you suffer a major trauma, like it's all about perspective, because there's always going to be the grass that's greener. There's always going to be, a past that you regret or something you could have done better, and you're kind of always walking between those two things. And it's about putting both of those sides in perspective, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. You've said some really, really wise and powerful things, so thank you. Is there anything else that you want to share or maybe have to?
I don't know. You asked some good questions. I honestly, I think when individuals they're put up against a challenge, it really shows what you're made of. And I hate to sound harsh. Some people will suffer more than others because they just, whatever experience in life maybe didn't prepare them for that, or maybe they just can't accept it at the time. But if there's one thing that people could take away, I would say that life in general is hard, regardless of how much you can walk or how much you can function, or whether you're a paraplegic or whether you're an amputee or whether you're a fully functioning person. Everyone has challenges and they're all relative to that person. But I guess things can be a lot worse, and so if you can kind of take advantage of the bright things in life, whether it be your family, your friends, your job, or the free time you get, or an activity you do, or even making time for yourself, if it's as small as reading at home or just taking a moment to kind of reflect. I think those daily affirmations and moments that can kind of just get you through some of the more difficult times, if you are, suffering, whether it be mentally or physically, because yeah, I mean, and honestly, sharing those things with other people, and or if you do need help, or you do feel like um, it would be better to kind of reach out, I think that's an important thing too, and not try and internalize it all and suffer it, alone, and because that's really hard too. Everybody needs a little bit of help some period of time, and if you're not scared, or you don't have too big of an ego, or you can always ask for help. I think that's an important thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's probably the biggest takeaway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's also difficult. I mean, if you can overcome, like you said, the ego, I think that's what it is. Because asking for help is such a, like, even if it's something small, I don't like to do it. It is an ego-driven thing that I feel like if I were in your position, I'd be so, like, you're stubborn, so I feel like I'd be so stubborn where I'm like, don't help me, but clearly I would need
Sure.
help, but what do you have to say? I mean, what advice do you have to someone who's kind of like that, who's like, no, I can even feel someone out there being like, not doing that, I heard you. What can you say to someone who has that?
Honestly, I've been reading a lot about. I do read some self-development books and things like that. I think those feelings, like, they're valid, like that they're valid in the context of the person that's feeling them. So they probably have some previous experience, like whether behavioral or learned or whatever. Like, there's a reason people think that way.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of have to identify the why behind that.
Yeah.
So you can
So wise.
right. So you can address that. Because those things just don't exist. There's a reason behind that. So my stubbornness was, it was a learned behavior. It was something that I've always been, and it's probably a combination of things. Like, when I was active, and I would always, fall or do things, I would always get right back up, try it again, until eventually I did it. So that is a form of resilience and stubbornness in itself, but it doesn't always translate in a positive way. Sometimes it can be in a negative way. So I think the best, to answer your question, would be to kind of find the why behind some of those things, whether it be stubbornness is just one example.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are all things that you pick up along the way. And if you can't look at yourself introspectively and from an outside perspective, sometimes it helps to talk to somebody to show you that, whether it be a therapist or a close friend or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that's the best starting point, is to kind of, take the time and be open to understanding and be vulnerable to knowing, like, okay, this is something that I struggle with, or something that I could work on, or whatever, because that's the first step, is kind of acceptance. It goes a long way.
Yeah. Wow, that was very, very wise of you. My one of my online mentors, his name is David Guillaume. Shout out David Guillaume. He had posted someone's question. They said it was something like basic, like, oh, how do I cut this energetic cord to someone, or something, And he's like, what are you really asking? He's like, that's not your question. What are you really asking? Like, why is this affecting you? Why is it, like, like, it was just a whole getting down to that why, like you said. So I think that is so key, because even me just asking that question, you opened my eyes to, like, oh, hold on, like, let's get down to the bottom of, like, what is the root cause of this, not just trying to get over the surface. So that's great. That's really, really, that was really great.
Well, it's got you thinking. So yeah, it's a good thing. And me too. I was the same way when I kind of discovered that difference. Like, it's the brain does that. You don't do things like in a vacuum. There's a reason behind them, and sometimes it's more difficult to find others. But there's other behaviors and things that you can never really try and understand. Like, somebody hurt somebody or kill somebody. That's totally different. Like, it's hard to understand that. But there's other things where, you know, a lot of people, you can relate to them and people can relate to each other because they've had similar struggles. And I think that's
Yeah.
part of, like, that can help understand why, you know, because you're not alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the human psychology subject, I guess, is just so interesting because on that subject, I was watching have you watched the P. Diddy documentary on Netflix?
I have,
I was getting angry about how he treated people, but then they gave a little blurb of like his mom, how his mom treated him, and how she basically threw her own Diddy parties and like had him as like a little.
I remember that, yeah.
So, not that like it makes any of his behaviors okay, but I kind of understood like, oh, that's how he got to be that way. Like it's just kind of like you have like an understanding of like, I don't know, it was like a light bulb moment for me where I was like, oh, that's why he's awful, because his mother was awful. But I mean, there are stories out there that the parents were terrible and they somehow got out of it. But I feel like maybe
Sure.
he, like you said before in the interview, like maybe he didn't have the tools or the knowledge or the, you know, information on how to
I think
overcome that.
I think he had a lot of enablers too, you know, because he had a lot of power over a lot of people, whether it be financially or whether it be for some other way or reason.
Yeah.
There is not a lot of people that could say no to him, I think, or had the ability to. That's kind of a good example. But the other one, like you said, there's a lot of people that have grown up in difficult environments and have done well. And I think it's all, he used his talents and power in a bad way. You know, a lot of people do that and use it in a better way. And why that happens or what determines that is really difficult to say. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
see that too.
Oh man, getting deep here on the cash,
Sure.
but that's usually what we do. Anything else you want to?
No, I think
Advice?
it's been enjoyable. I like to share my story, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It helps me too. It kind of reminds me of things that I've been through, and it's beneficial for me too. So I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. So, before we sign off, I like to say my slogan at the end of every interview. I like to remind the audience, all of you, those of you that are watching at home, that there's true power in authenticity. So, always remember to be yourself. So, with that said, be who, and my guest says, be you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Always remember to be who?
Be you.
That's right. And we will